All right, who's scared? Welcome, everyone. We thought we'd start the night off with a few scare tactics tonight. Great to see such excellent turnout for this. Welcome. My name is Kellen Klein. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Community. And this is Wildfire in Sisters Country Part 1. That's right. We realized that this topic was so big and so vast that we needed to split it into 2 parts and bring on some reinforcements. So I'm really happy to have this event co-presented in addition to our standard supporter, the Nugget, but also by Rotary Club of Sisters and Sisters Kiwanis. If you are a member of C4C or Rotary or Sisters Kiwanis, would you please briefly stand up in this way so everybody can get a sense of who you are? Fantastic. Thank you all so much for your support. I've got to say, it is fantastic bringing in those reinforcements. Setup has never gone faster than it went today. When I was twiddling my thumbs wondering what to do, we had so many people here to support. If you are in need of a volunteer army in Sisters Country, I highly recommend that you reach out to Kiwanis and Rotary because they are just fantastic and they give so much to our community. Thank you so much, Kiwanis and Rotary, for being here. And thank you again. Yeah, we can give them a round of applause. And thank you also to the Nugget, who has been a longtime supporter of this programming. We are so fortunate to have small town journalism in Sisters at a time when, yes, absolutely, at a time when it's disappearing across the country, especially here in the central and east of Oregon, the Nugget persists. And if you want it to go on, then I encourage you to subscribe so that you can get it in your mailbox every week, or just make a contribution. They will greatly accept your money without having to deliver paper as well. Jim is over here. You can always find him in the hat if you want to talk to him more. But yes, thank you to the Nugget, or as I call it, the single source of truth for Sisters Country. So normally at the beginning of these events, we read off something that is supposed to be in my back pocket. It might be in my front pocket. Where is it? I'm going to go sashay over here to find another backup. But we have something called our Speak Your Piece ground rules. These are terms of engagement for any conversation. They're appropriate for everything from the Thanksgiving dinner table to major public fora like this. And so we ask that everyone in the audience commit to upholding these terms of engagement or these ground rules for our conversation today. So I will read. Today, we ask that you pay attention, listen, be inclusive, not gossip, show respect, be agreeable, apologize, give constructive criticism, take responsibility. And there's always a choose your own adventure on number 10. And today, I'm going to say number 10 is take action. And you'll see why in a minute. Can I count on y'all to uphold those today? We will, yes, something like that. All right, great. So, amen, yes, there we go. Please feel free to help yourself to additional food and beverages outside the doors during the session. There are bathrooms right across the hall. If you've got a kiddo or someone who acts like a kiddo and needs childcare today, that is around the corner in the library. Normally at these, we do a quick meet and greet as well. Get to know your neighbor. But today we're going to pivot a little bit and do something different. You each should have a handout, a front and back handout on your seat. Please pull this out. Because we're not letting you leave here without being more prepared, literally, for Wildfire in Sisters Country. Extras? There might be some over there. And if not, share with your neighbor. That's how you can meet your neighbor. If you don't have one, meet a new friend. So you have a handout in front of you. We are going to ask you to take the first step in taking some action to be more prepared for Wildfire in Sisters Country. The first thing, as you are scanning down that piece of paper, right after it says ways you can take action right now, it says sign up for Deschutes County alerts. This is going to help you know when there's an emergency in our community and what you should do, where you should go. There's a QR code on the right. Raise your hand if you've never used a QR code before. Raise your hand if you don't know what that is. All right, fantastic. If you're sitting next to someone who doesn't know how to use it, they can show you, or you can show them. You can either take a picture of that QR code with your phone. You can type in that link at the bottom, but I strongly encourage all of you, if you have not already signed up for Deschutes County alerts, to take a photo of that right now. Just having 150 more people in our community who are alerted or receive those alerts is actually huge, because then maybe your neighbor isn't signed up, but you can make sure to help look out for them when those alerts come through as well. So you have to set up an account in order to get those alerts, but if you at least have the browser window loaded on your phone, that's going to be huge for later. The second thing I want to do is I'm going to bring up another slide. Wait for it. Next thing is knowing your evacuation zone. This is it when you get that text on your phone, and Nathan can correct me back there if I describe this incorrectly, but when you get that text on your phone, it might say this particular code, evacuate. But this particular code is not evacuate yet. One code is get ready, and another one is go down, for instance. And so if you know your code, this is for within Sister city limits. In a moment, I'll just put up one for broader Sisters country. Hopefully you can figure out where you live from that code, but take a minute, take a photo if you want to. Also, that big QR code, I know QR codes again, at the top of your flyer, has all this information in it. You'll be able to look this up after the fact when you go home, memorize that, write it on your heart, get it tattooed on your arm, know your code. Next one. All right, this is for broader Sisters country. I know those numbers might be a little small for the people in the back. Apologies, but I'll leave it up there for a second again. This is for the entire region. You will have these evacuation codes no matter where you live. This is going to be really, really critical in the event of an emergency. I'm 41, if you want to know where I live. Oh, I'm done. Almost. I'm code 41. You can also do this, know your evacuation zone, just by scanning that, which is also on your slide. All right, we're going to take one more action, or one more recommended action. Let's put it that way. And that's this one. Recommend you take a photo of this QR code here. It is also on your, it is the first QR code on the back of your handout. This is the Watch Duty app. This is run by volunteers. It is a nonprofit. It is set up with real-time updates of evacuation information, as well as of fires nearby, what resources are being deployed to them, what the air quality is, what way the wind is blowing. So sometimes when information is in short supply, or if you're just anxious like me and you want to know ahead of time, you know, do I need to be proactive in getting ready? Should I be, based on where the wind is blowing, should I be starting to pack my things up even if I haven't gotten an alert yet? This app is very helpful for that. It is not, you know, an official government entity. It's run by volunteers, but it does have real-time updates. So I highly recommend that you download this one as well. Okay. Hopefully you at least did one of those. There's a bunch more in your packet. Take this home. Recommend you do as many of them as possible, and we will all be more prepared for wildfire in Sisters country. Now that we've scared you, now that we've made you take action a little bit, now that we've set the context for the day, I'm really grateful that we're going to have a board member of C4C, Bruce Rognlien, come up here and kick things off. Bruce lives part-time in Sisters country and part-time down in California, where he and his family recently survived the Pacific Palisades fire. And so he is going to tell us a little bit about that experience, which hopefully will help all of us sort of get grounded in the concept of don't think this can't happen here. Bruce, thank you. Thank you. Also have your slides too. Okay. You want to on the handle or you want to yeah. Hi. Oh, for the extra handouts?
Send some of those extra sheets down this way for the people that are to get all this QR.
Thank you for that suggestion. That is great. If you can hand it, you have the handouts over here. And if you want a digital copy or to download your own later, it's the big QR code at the top. All right, I'll pull up your slides. All right, great. Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Do you hear me? Yeah. Good. Welcome. This is quite a good crowd. Now, a lot of the vendors are in the room, Kellen. That's just great. That's good information. Well, no took my theme away. I'm supposed to scare you into action. And the reason for that is the Pacific Palisades fire that Marlene and I experienced on January 7th of this year. We have lived in Sisters since 1962 part-time. And we have also lived in the Palisades for 50 years. So we go back and forth. And so Marlene sends her hello. She's back in LA. Let me give you some background on this Palisades fire. Fires, and this terminology is probably my own, but fires have three pieces to them. One is fuel, which in that case is brush in the countries above the city. Second is oxygen, and we had 85 mile an hour winds. And third is heat, and the Santa Ana winds that originate in the fall and the winter, they're off the desert, so they're always warm winds. So that's what happened to us. And then the winds hit the first slide, don't we?
This one here?
Oh, yeah. This one, by the way, is wonderful. This is Sisters, 1910. This used to be a logging town, believe it or not. When we got here in 62, there was still a mill operating and railroad cars out here that were no longer used, that were housing for loggers that would go up in the mountains. That's an observation deck. Pretty fancy, huh? I can't find fighting this thing, Kellen. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that this town has been in a fire zone forever. And it will always be. Somebody said in the anti-way that they moved here from paradise, and it looks like paradise, both in fact and in comparison. So this has always been an area that's been a fire zone. Next slide, Kel. This is a screenshot. I'm gonna take this out. Yeah. There you go. Thanks, Tim. From the CBS News, and you can see the winds here. 100 miles an hour, 98, 90, 86, Burbank Airport, 84 miles an hour. It was awful. It was just awful. And in the space of 24 to 48 hours, 6,000 homes, average value $2 million, went up in smoke. 6,000 of them, all the way to the ocean. It went all the way from Sunset Boulevard all the way to the ocean. Everything was gone. Beaches on, houses on the beach, everything. And what we learned out of that, and it was represented in this video ahead of time, the enemy is not flames. The enemy is ember showers. Ember showers. They can travel a mile and land on a house or a yard or a park or a church. Turn to the next one. Watch this video. We're going to play it 3 times. And you can see that, if you can see it, get the lights off.
Tap the middle one. Thanks.
Yeah, that's better. Look at the flames. Look at it outlined by the telephone pole there. And what you see flashing back and forth, those are embers. And these guys are nuts to take this picture and be this close to this fire. That car is probably going to burn up. And look at it. I mean, it's just scary. I mean, you just have to, and it has its own sound and its own wind, and it's just unbelievable. Next slide.
Working on it.
All right. No problem. Now, this is, you see the fire on the top, the orange color there? That's a fire. Watch this. This is fabulous. This is a private Nest camera. There's 13 firefighters going into the fray. You think it was a military operation? They're not saying a word. They're on their mission. They're doing their thing. They got saws, they got shovels, they got all the gear that they need to do, and they're just on their way. And that's what happens. I don't know how many were up there. You guys can tell us that. There must have been thousands of firefighters fighting this fire. Next slide, Kel. And here's an example of where we live on the hillside, and most of these were hillsides. You can see the embers or the ashes over here on the left, and the fire burned right up to that wall. That house is okay, but you can't see it in the background. That house is gone. It's gone. 6,000 homes gone. The next slide, Kel. And here's an interesting, this truck from Canada. And this is what they call Class 6 truck. It's got double wheels on the back and a big tank. They do private firefighting, and a number of people in our neighborhood hired them to protect their homes. But they call them Embers Wildfire Defense Solutions. And here's the last slide, which I want to show you, is our house with the LAPD below, because there were a lot of people trying to pilfer houses, trying to steal stuff. And they're down there protecting the whole neighborhood. Every day for 7 days, we call our neighbor and says, "Our house still there? Is it still there?" And Gary says, "Yeah, it's still there." And one day he says, "Oh, geez, I don't know. It looks like your house is burning down. There's a big palm tree behind your house. It looks like it's on fire." Call them together, and they say, "Well, I was wrong. Thank God it wasn't on fire." But here's what did happen. The wind shifted, as I talked about before, and it can shift here. That's why there's no evacuation sign plans with signs here in town, because the wind could come in different directions. It means you got to exit in different directions. Salem, Bend, Redmond. This fire was out for a week, and then about the 14th of January, the wind shifted and it shot the hot spots up Malibu towards, and the mountains up towards Mulholland Drive.
And then it shifted again back towards us. Thank God there was a Utah-based fire truck, class 2, sitting right in front of our front yard. We weren't there. The house across the street, roof caught on fire. They put that out. Embers from that came into our yard, 50 feet from our front door, and burned the hillside. And they put that out. So this is serious stuff. I mean, this is something that you got to really look at and understand what it is that can happen to us here. I'm going to close with this set of remarks. We've lived here a long time. Many of you have, and many of you are new. We're in fire country. Now, one of the fire guys was telling me the other day that he's inspected over 300 homes with a 5-foot diameter safety zone around the house, and 99% of the people he goes back to look at haven't done a thing. Haven't done a thing. No problem is not going to happen to us, which is what we said in the Palisades. We've had 3 evacuations, but we never had the fire come into town. It was always up on the hillside. You can't come into town. It's impossible. Ember fires, ember flames. So we just ask you, from a person who's actually experienced this, act. Don't just take notes today. Act. This is your town, your life, and your biggest asset, or my biggest asset, is my house. How about you? So why not protect it? And it'd be important to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I'm going to go ahead and invite our panelists to come up while I'm putting up this projector screen. And while I'm doing that, after I do this, because I can't multitask, please hold. Yeah, we'll bring these chairs to the middle. And while we're doing this, I want to set one piece of context that I haven't said yet. Who here is concerned about insurance? Raise your hand. Fire insurance. Great, we're not talking about that today. Because that is part 2 on May 18th, and we hope you'll come right back to this exact location on part 2 when we talk about wildfire in Sisters Country. Are we covered? We're going to have some experts from the insurance industry, policymakers, et cetera, who are going to be talking about those evolving dynamics. And I know that that is top of mind for everyone. And that is why we chose to do preparedness first and insurance second, because we wanted to hook you in, get you all the good, important information so you actually take action, and then you can come back and learn about the insurance dynamics as well. I'm really fortunate to be joined on stage today for our conversation by 4 people from our community and the surrounding area who are really experts in this space. I'll start closest here. Craig Letz with Tamarack Wildfire Consulting. Jennifer Letz, the mayor of Sisters. No relation, I'm sure. Stephen Lord, community risk specialist, is that correct? With Sisters Sherman Fire District. And Nathan Garibay, who is the lead emergency management lead for the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. Please give them a round of applause. So we're going to break up this conversation into 3 parts, starting in part 1, the state of our community's preparedness for wildfire. So I'm going to start with Nathan on the far side, and you can imagine this starting with sort of concentric circles geographically, starting further out and moving in closer to our town, and then our neighborhoods, and then us as individuals. So Nathan, let's start with you. You lead emergency management coordination efforts for Deschutes County and surrounding areas of Central Oregon. Can you paint us a little bit of a picture about just how many entities are involved in that management planning and how well they are or aren't working together around this issue?
Oh, okay, it does work. I wasn't sure. Well, first of all, I would say that there are dozens of entities and agencies that we work with on a regular basis. So here in Deschutes County, kind of starting at the local level with a Sisters context. We have lots of working relationships with the city of Sisters and the departments, particularly Public Works and Planning, Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. We also work with Blackview Ranch, Cloverdale, and all the neighboring jurisdictions here in Central Oregon or in Sisters Country. And then moving out, looking at state agencies, so Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon Department of Emergency Management, Oregon Department of Human Services. We have a number of collaborative planning projects with them around fire and fire evacuation and some of the protective actions we can take during fires. And then, you know, the U.S. Forest Service here, Sisters Ranger District, Central Oregon Fire Management, which includes both the Prineville District of BLM and the Deschutes National Forest, as well as Oshkosh National Forest. All very important partners. And what you see on a blue sky day is a lot of collaboration around ensuring that our messages align, that we're not doing and saying things that might have an adverse downstream effect. The reality of it is it takes a lot more time, energy, and effort to do things together, but ultimately the end product is significantly better. And then those relationships persevere into response. And so as we I think we're going to talk some scenarios down the road tonight. When we get into the response, those relationships are already established and we work really well together. And I do want to just highlight, we try to pair our procedures and policies very similar to Jefferson County and Kirk County, because we recognize that we share our community members. So you might live in one county, work in another, vice versa. You might have family members that live in another jurisdiction. We want to make sure that what we're telling people is consistent across the Central Oregon region.
You know, one thing you said to me on the phone the other day is, of all the areas you've engaged with, you felt like Central Oregon might have some of the best coordination around these issues as any you've seen. Is that, am I paraphrasing that correctly?
Yeah, at risk of sounding a little patting ourselves on the back.
Make sure they don't get complacent from this, okay?
Yeah, no, please don't, because it all starts with you. But the reality of it is, what you see in Central Oregon is not as commonplace as we'd like to think. And whether you go around the state or you go around the country, I think the reality of it is the relationships and the trust that we put in one another is a real big key to the success that we have here when we work together.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's pretty impressive to hear all the entities that are engaged in thinking about this stuff on a regular basis. I mean, it's a semblance of comfort. Let's put it that way without getting too complacent. Let's move to Craig now. So, Craig, you're our forest guy today, and you have you currently work for a Tamarack Wildfire Consulting private consultancy, and we can let you elaborate a little bit on that. But you also have decades of experience leading fire management preparedness efforts within national forests and in partnership with various state and federal agencies. I'm not sure if you knew, but we're actually surrounded by forests here in Sisters as well. And so I was curious from your experience, does the Forest Service and other agencies that are working closely on the forest themselves, are they ready for wildfire? And are these agencies working proactively to help protect our livelihoods here, within city limits or in other parts of Sisters country?
Yeah, and I got, what, 30 minutes to answer that?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? All right, so my background is in forest management, wildland fire. Specifically, I have a bachelor's degree in forestry. I spent 25 years working for the Forest Service and the BLM and the National Park Service. I ended my career here in Central Oregon as the fire staff officer for Central Oregon Fire Management Service. And I then started a consulting business, and I've been working with HOAs and developers, private homeowners, and some other local government agencies in wildland fire policy since then. So I want to start, that's a really complex question. I want to start kind of talking about the Forest Service or the forest first. The Sisters country surrounding area is a fire dependent ecosystem. That means it needs fire to be healthy. And we've kept fire out of it for over 100 years now, to the best of our abilities. We've gotten really good at it. And we've been working really hard to kind of restore fire over the last probably 30 years or so, with some success. We're getting better at that. But I want folks to understand that we really need fire here. There's no surrogate for it. We can thin, we can mow, we can masticate, but we can't have that final piece of forest health until we put fire back into the system. That's especially true in our ponderosa pine forest. And it is even true, believe it or not, in our juniper and sage surroundings as well. So I don't want folks thinking that this is just a forest problem. It's surrounding us. The rangelands burn really hot as well, and they are fire dependent as well. So let's talk real quick. The ponderosa pine, we know a lot about ponderosa pine. That's the majority of what we have around Sisters. That we know historically burned every 7 to 15 years. So any given stand of ponderosa pine probably burned between 7 and 15 years. And that just went on and on and on. And we had these beautiful open forests with very little brush, big giant ponderosa pine trees. So here's some perspective on that. The Deschutes National Forest has 500,000 acres of ponderosa pine. So if we want to make some simple math and say we were going to treat that, let's just pick 10 years because that's between 7 and 15. So if we were going to treat our 50,000 acres every 10 years, we'd have to be burning 50,000 acres a year to get. And we'd have to just keep doing that over and over and over again.
And how much does the Sisters Ranger District planning to burn this year?
I think their target, don't quote me on this, but I think their target is between 1,000 and 2,000 acres. On average, the Deschutes National Forest as a whole, on average, treats about 6,000 acres a year with prescribed fire. And that's due to a ton of limitations that we can maybe talk about later. So think about this. If you've heard this, the Sisters District of the Deschutes National Forest, probably over 50% of the district is burned since the year 2000. But if you were around for the Millie fire, think about when that was. It was 2017. So we're coming up. It's ready to burn again. It's that frequent as how fire used to move through here. So we can't say that this is a one and done treatment. This is a recurring thing that we have to work really hard to keep managing and treating. So let's shift gears and talk about the agencies a little bit. As Nathan pointed out, we're very fortunate. We're very well coordinated. The response to wildfire is among the best. I've worked in several different places, and I can tell you that this is the most coordinated place that I've been in terms of how the agencies work together, how they come together, how they practice and train together. So we're very fortunate that way. I wanted to talk a little bit about that just capacity. The question is, are the forests ready? Is the agency ready? I think the agency's ready. I think the forest needs work. I think the agencies are struggling to maintain enough people and enough funding and enough staffing to do the work. And if we think about what's happening right now, that's very concerning, because even if the people that are leaving the Forest Service and the BLM and the Park Service aren't firefighters, everybody in those agencies supports fire management, whether it's planning for prescribed fire or fuels treatments or helping out on the fires themselves. It's a militia effort, and everybody supports that in all those agencies that manage land and fight fire. So we have some challenging times. They've been struggling with recruitment and retention for years now. Firefighting is tough work. It didn't pay very well. They're starting to fix that, so things are looking up. But there's some big challenges coming up. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is our incident management teams. So when a fire gets larger, we bring in help from all over the country, and there's incident management teams. I started my career in 1990, and starting from about 2000 on, maybe even a little bit before that, we have been struggling to staff those incident management teams. And these are the teams that come and they manage the large fires, and they do it very well. And we're currently down, I think just from last year to this year, we went nationally from 44 teams to 40, I believe. And that trend has been happening since the 2000s. So we have fewer and fewer incident management teams, which means that the ones that we do have are working longer and longer hours, and then they're getting more and more burned out. So we have some kind of cyclic things that we need to fix there.
Wow, a lot of information. Thank you, Greg. I'm also mindful that, we're talking about the national forest, but a lot of Sisters Country is private land as well. And I'll probably say more of that for later, but shout out to a few of the entities in the back who will helping with prescribed burns and debris removal on private lands, both within and outside of city limits. So I encourage you to go chat with them across the back wall over there after this, and all of our other vendors who I'll try to shout out later. All right, let's bring it in a little bit more local. Mayor Letz, you've been on city council for several years. You're now Sisters Mayor. You, along with Craig, have a background in wildfire management and have been co-running this wildfire management consultancy. So you have we're so lucky to have someone with so much experience in this space now leading our city. I'm curious, what types of conversations are you and other city leaders having around wildfire preparedness, and what are you looking at in terms of whether it's policy, code updates, or preparedness initiatives? What's the city's role in this issue?
Great question. We're talking a lot about it, which is the first step. There's a report that came out by an organization called Headwaters Economics about a year ago. They do research projects, for issues really pertinent to the west, the wildfire is something they do a lot of research on. And they had a report on what are the cost benefit ratios of different things you can do around wildfire mitigation. The report said the cheapest and easiest thing that can be done to have a big impact is policy and code changes. And you would think it's something on the ground, it's removing the fuel, it's hiring a firefighter, something like that. But they said the cheapest and most effective thing is that dry, boring code change stuff. And so that's where we're stepping in. The fire issues have been on our council goals ever since I've been on council, this is my 5th year. And a year or two ago, we were really, turning the screws on ourselves and staff to like, let's get this to the top of our to-do list, because we really need to be more proactive. Of course, with the state efforts with Senate Bill 762 and wildfire death and all that stuff, we were kind of promised the state would handle it, so we backed off a little bit. But after a while, we realized about a year ago, we realized, this isn't going to go the way that they were intending. We had that crystal ball, so we started kind of going our own direction. We were writing the bill, reviewing some code that the city staff has put together, and we're right in the thick of getting to a place to finalizing that and voting on that. So this would be development code. Codes kind of into a few pieces. Development is anything that into the future, right? So we have a UGB expansion coming up. That would apply to anything that was brought into the city after that UGB, master plan development, things like that. So also a new house, if somebody just bought a lot and built a new house, it would kind of impact that. But it's really those kind of larger scale places. So, and this is going to be on defensible space. There's two things you may have picked up on that in that video. There's basically 2 ways you can defend your home and property. Defensible space is basically your landscaping, anything outside the walls of your structure. And then there's
Home hardening,
thank you, home hardening, which is, yes, he's been paying attention.
10 points for me.
Yes, home hardening, which is things you actually do to your house, your structure, your outbuildings, things like that. So right now, what we're working on is defensible space code, the outside, for new development. We kind of have to piecemeal it because we have a very small staff, and we can only kind of do one thing at a time. And hopefully, when we get to building code, there's kind of a state code already that we'll hopefully be able to plug and play, and that process will go faster. But it's something that we just have to kind of do in pieces. Obviously, nobody's interested in unfunded mandates, so we're starting, conversations on how we can partner with other agencies, other entities, physically, financially, to help people harden their homes, improve their landscaping around their houses, because some of these fixes are cheap and easy, and some of them aren't. And we know that there's people all over the income demographics in our community, and we're very well aware of that. So we're also starting those conversations to see how the city can help out, and again, with a lot of partner organizations in the area. So this isn't such a burden on our community. And obviously, we're listening to the citizens, and big questions after these LA fires. There's all this talk about, well, fire hydrants ran out of water, and are we going to run out of water, and what's our capacity, and feeling a lot of questions on that. So I'll just throw a couple facts out at you if you have those same questions. Currently, the city has one water tank, 1.6 million gallons south of the city. We do have plans to build a new one starting next year, which will more than double our capacity. So that's coming soon. And we have about 300 fire hydrants in the city. They usually have a 400 to 500 foot spacing. And you have 4 wells in the city. 3 of them have backup power, so if the power goes, we can still run the wells and still charge the system. Because a lot of times when fire comes, the power goes. And so we're well aware of that. We're also getting another backup generator. But when I asked about, capacity, if there was, a lot of fire hydrants being used at the same time, our public works director felt like if they were, kind of going full pressure, we would really only be able to operate 4 to 6 at one time. And so that's not a number that anybody wants to hear, but I think it just goes, and that's something that, you know, we will be working on improving the water system over time, partially for fire reasons, but partially, you know, just we need water and flush our toilets and all that fun stuff. But it just highlights the importance of what we can do as property owners. It's just that much more critical. There's only so much infrastructure can do. I mean, we can have, you know, the fire department can have 500 firefighters, and you have a massive conflagration like we've seen over and over again. There's only so much you can do, but what you can do at your property is just that much more important.
Yeah, that's a great point, because even if we had 20 fire hydrants working, would we have, you know, enough firefighters to manage all of those, at least not with the current capacity as well. So it's kind of a good segue to Stephen, I think. Stephen, you work for Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District, and a core part of your work is community engagement and risk management, going out into the community, helping people learn how they can make their homes and their landscaping and their properties more, you know, fire safe. Can you tell us how you interact with the Sisters community and what that's taught you about the current level of preparedness at the neighborhood or individual level?
Okay, well, first off, I spend about 50% of my time on operations, 50% of my time doing community education, wildland fire home assessments. I have a group of people from our fire corps that actually help us do those. I do a majority of them because we're pretty busy this time of year. So I want to just take a quick poll of how many people have had the pleasure of me talking in your ear for an hour doing a wildland fire home assessment. Raise your hand. Okay.
Each of you gets 10 points as well. Congratulations.
So, and all those people who have got some recommendations, how many people have started doing things? That was great to hear.
What percentage of your line now?
I think I have to fix my percentages that very soon.
No, it's just all the overachievers come to these events.
Okay, so how many people invited me knowing what, or invited our fire corps to come out and do an assessment, knowing what you kind of needed to do and your property's in pretty good shape? Respectable. For the most part, in our eyes, most of the people that are signing up for these home assessments where I get a chance to educate people really have a good idea of what they need to be doing. It's the people that have a disaster in their yard are not going to be calling the fire department to tell them what they probably already know. So my job is to educate you, and so we do things like this because it's pretty important that you understand. We talked about all of our partners and how we're all aligned, and we have the greatest plans ever to fight fire. And then something unfortunate happens, like an east wind that took out McKenzie Valley and Detroit. Those things can happen to us. Are we prepared for something with 80-mile-an-hour winds? No fire department is. You can't shoot a stream of water in 80-mile-an-hour winds and put out fire. So how can we change that? Home to home, I'm trying to get in people's mind that my house in Cloverdale, I live off Fryer. It's a hot spot, sagebrush, tons of fuel. A bunch of my neighbors don't do a thing. And guess what? My house is 5 acres of a sitting duck. If I have to leave and fight a fire in Cloverdale or in Sisters Country. So my job at my house is to make sure my house can stand alone. And that's the most important part of that is your defensible space. So I spend most of my time kind of drilling into people's heads at that 0 to 5 foot defensible space is where your house is going to catch on fire. That's called the home ignition zone. Once a house fire starts, we're already behind the ballgame with our fire department. We're going to have Blackview come, we're going to have Cloverdale come, and depending on how the incident is emerging, we're going to have other departments come, especially if it's wildland fire start of nature, because ember showers are going to come, and it could be a half-mile wide, blowing into our town and landing at everybody's doorstep on their doormat that they didn't move, or on the wreath they left on their door, and that's going to burn your house down. So if one fire starts in a house, think of everything that we have in our home. It's chock full of petroleum-made products It's a tremendous amount of fuel. It's not like trees in a forest. I mean, they are fuel, but think of what everything that we have in our house and everything that our furniture is made of and all the plastics and everything. A tremendous amount of fuel that when the wind is blowing, we don't really have wildland fire without wind. The wind is blowing and your house catches on fire, it's going to create more embers to push to your neighbor's house. And so we're in trouble. We can pretty much fight one house fire, a regular structure fire at a time. And I hate to tell people this, if you live in Pine Meadow and your house catches on fire, your house is probably going to burn down. We're going to try to protect all the homes around it to keep it from spreading to our town. So that's hopefully I answered all of those questions. Did I get?
I think you did pretty solid.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I mean, you underscored that, there's probably, we are underprepared, we might be overprepared, or at least pretty solidly prepared from an agency and organizational level, but, as you trickle down to the individual level, it's clear that there's still a lot of work to do in our community. I mean, I know I can attest, I live in Clear Pine, and just walking around, you can see, oh, there's mulch up to the edge of the foundation on just about every house. Oh, there's a wooden fence directly connected to the house. And so that, there's a lot of barriers to implementation, a lot of cost to shifting that, but there's a lot of work to do. And I think,
So if I better answer the last question there.
oh, please.
Are local residents ready for wildfire? I would honestly tell you, we are not ready for a wildfire. Unfortunately, and we have an opportunity to change that. And that starts with having meetings like this. So everybody understands the danger that we live in. Last year, our state had record amount of acres burned. Most of it was on BLM. I've told all of you guys that have raised your hand, we dodged a huge bullet last year. Lightning was heading our direction and ended up going east. That's where all the fires happened, and that's where they sent us.
Thank you. Yeah, and we had a brush fire just a few days ago outside of town, right?
Yeah, oh, okay, speaking to that, 85% of fires are human caused, so we need to do better as humans. Last July, almost all of our fires were started last year by human starts. And then in August, we had the lightning fires. So we can expect to have weather-related fire. We just gotta cut out the human caused fires, because that's what's gonna burn us down.
Thank you. And in your handout that you received, there's also a QR code where you can sign up or go to the fire district's website and sign up to request a home assessment from Stephen and the fire corps, and I highly recommend it. It was highly informative for me. All right, we're going to move on to part 2 of this, which is focused on walking y'all through an actual scenario. Sometimes it's hard to wrap our heads around, okay, if a fire happens, what does that actually look like for all of us on the ground and for the agencies involved, et cetera? So we're going to create a theoretical scenario and work through it here. So let's imagine it's a hot August day and there's a strong westerly wind blowing. This is something I learned recently. Oftentimes we think, oh, if the fire happens, it's going to come from the west, off the mountains down into town. But it sounds like in general, actually, some of the highest risk events are the ones when the wind is blowing from the east to the west. Did I summarize our discussion from the other day correctly?
Yeah, we can expect the winds in the summertime to come down off the slopes, and it's going to be 15, 20 mile an hour winds. It can come from the north as well, in the northwest, but we can always assume, just like they assume that Santa Ana winds are going to come from the east. Our major fires happen that devastated us came from the east, blowing west, but the devastating fires that are going to wipe out our neighborhood or our neighborhoods are something, the 15 to 20 mile an hour winds with a bunch of fuel on fire, a bunch of embers blowing in our yards.
Great, thanks. Okay, so it's a hot August day. There's a wind blowing in from the east to the west, and a call comes in reporting a fire just east of town. Stephen, we're going to go back to you to start. You kind of mentioned the human cause element is like 85%. So can you just elaborate on that? What are some of the most likely causes of that fire if it happens? Like, which are the genuine risks that we should be concerned about? Is it power lines? Is it an out of control campfire that someone didn't put out fully? Is it a houseless camp in the woods? Is it a car driving down the road dragging some chains? Is it farming equipment? Rank them for us.
Rank them. You hit them all. I don't have to answer that question now.
Which are the genuine risks, and or is it hard to predict?
Really hard to predict. I guess, yeah, campfires, we had a lot of people that came in and camped, that they don't put out their fires correctly. We've got people in our neighborhoods that, don't put out their, yard debris fires, and, they think they're out, and they're not, and 2 days later, the wind blows, and all of a sudden, there's a bunch of acreage on fire. We do get fires that start from people traveling through, dragging chains, or they're pulling a heavy load and their truck fire starts on fire. And not only do we have a car fire, but it extends into the forest surrounding our freeways.
So, for this scenario, which fire example do you want to choose?
Let's go with a campfire, that wasn't put out.
Okay, somewhere east of town that, is blowing into town. So now let's go to, I'm gonna go to Stephen and Craig for starters. Let's assume that it's like right on the edge of town or within the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District's service area. Who are some of the first people that are going to respond to this fire, and how would those agencies start to be deployed?
First off, Sisters is gonna be deployed, or Blackbeard, or whoever is the closest, maybe both. ODF, fire department, or firefighters will be deployed, also US Forest Service. If it's a little further east, BLM will be involved, and they might come in to help us at that point anyway. But we're gonna have a multi-agency fire, or response.
Even from the get-go, huh?
Even from the get-go.
And Craig, how would that pivot a little bit if the fire started on national forest land as opposed to starting like in the city itself or on private lands?
Yeah, like honestly, initially, it wouldn't really make a difference. As closest resources are gonna respond. You know, Nathan and I and Stephen have all talked about how coordinated our agencies are. We spend a lot of time every winter working out agreements, practicing, training, drilling. So it really is kind of all hands, all lands type of idea. So really the closest resources are gonna show up, they're gonna communicate with each other for a coordinated effort. And as it expands, they're just gonna keep incorporating the incident command system.
Okay, let's move to that incident command system a little bit. Nathan, I'm gonna go to you next. So the winds are blowing, the fire is growing, and it becomes near that there's a need, or it becomes clear there's a need for additional resources and possible evacuation. So how does that process unfold?
Well, I think that information is going to come from the initial fire IC or ICs. So what you're describing, incident commanders, yeah. So what you're describing is a scenario where likely there will be some level of unified command from the immediate start of that fire. So particularly if it's within Sisters Camp Sherman and Forest Service or ODF protection. The reality of it is, that we utilize run cards both through Deschutes County 911 as well as Central Oregon Interagency Dispatch, which dispatches the federal and state resources. And we actually share information. So there's an iPad sitting in the COID dispatch center in Redmond, and Deschutes County 911 can send them calls. So as this event unfolds, our dispatch center would then notify COID and request resources, and all that call information would come over to COID, and that information would get translated to duty officers and engines and crews that are available to respond. Probably this time of year, you'd also get a response from air attack or a air tactical group supervisor, which would fly out of Redmond, likely, hopefully. And getting that aircraft overhead would give us a lot of situational awareness about where the fire is, what values at risk are out in front of it. So when we talk about values at risk, we think of homes, businesses, critical infrastructure like power lines, parks, things like that. And that all is going to feed into that decision-making process. And so our agency would also be responding from the initial dispatch. You think of August, there's probably about 6 to 7, 8 days a year where our fire risk, because of the relative humidity and the wind and the fuels, are just really receptive and really problematic. And if we're saying this is one of those days, likely agencies are already on edge, or I shouldn't say on edge, they're prepared and mentally prepared for potentially a fast moving fire. Once we get involved, we would engage with that unified command and make kind of unified decisions related to what's at risk, how to best protect those values, And that might be evacuations, it might be directing resources on one part of the fire versus others because there's greater values or there's more homes on that side of the fire. So prioritizing, say, one flank of the fire to wrap around and try to get resources in between the fire and those values. But if we do talk evacuation, that process, we've streamlined it pretty effectively in Deschutes County. We utilize a system called Everbridge. We also use, so when Kellen showed the map up there, those are zones that we utilize a system called Genesis, used to be called Zone Haven. And that has allowed us to quickly identify general areas at risk, put those shapes into Everbridge and get those alerts out very quickly and update the map. So interestingly, I don't quote unquote endorse watch duty, but they are very good at getting information out and getting it out quickly. And in fact, they immediately draw from Zone Haven or Genesis. So if we accidentally turn on a zone in Genesis, watch duty puts it out. So we don't do that.
I've definitely seen a few of those pop up every once.
Yeah, so so as soon as that information goes out, we identify, say, I'm going to throw a zone out there, 081. We can get that information out through Everbridge in a few minutes. We get the map updated, watch duties then grabbing that information and putting it out. And then we're sharing that information with our other responding agencies. In Central Oregon, the law enforcement agencies work really well together as far as supporting one another for evacuations. If you think back, I think it was 2018 or 2019, I can't remember, the rabbit brush fire between, it was actually Cloverdale's district, I think, right on the edge of Cloverdale's district. We had Bend PD was actually covering calls for county. We had OSP, Blackfeet Ranch, sheriff's deputies, as well as Oregon State Police, all conducting evacuations. We were able to get those evacuations done relatively quickly. But the reality of it is, the most important thing you can do is when we get into the summer in particular, but we're kind of going away from the term fire season because sometimes things fall out of season. But in particular on these days, you have a day where it's windy, it's hot, it's dry, our conditions are right for rapid fire growth. Those should be days that community members are prepared, that you're signed up for alerts. And when you do get that alert, probably the biggest thing you can do is be prepared to evacuate quickly and safely. That really is going to take the stress away from you. The other component there is if you've done your work, as has been mentioned, you can leave your home with some degree of confidence that it will still be there when you get back. And so I think that's I never want to forget to highlight that point.
Thank you. And just, I want to clarify one thing before I move on to Jennifer here. It sounds like there's, a lot of theoretical resources that could be deployed or a lot of potential resources, but there's also a lot of asterisks related to that. For instance, if there's already other fires going on in the area, if there's a lightning storm that comes over and we've got, a dozen fires popped up across Central Oregon, I imagine that's going to deplete resources or, depending on how spread out, the population is in the area where it's happening. It sounds like we shouldn't count on the cavalry coming to save the day for any of us, and the onus is really on each of us individually to be proactive and get out and also have our spaces prepared ahead of time. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. It really depends on how many parties there are going on in a region, but even nationally, particularly when it comes to aircraft availability. So we like to think that because we have an air tanker base 20 miles away in Redmond, that we're going to have lots of resources right away, but quite often those aircraft are committed elsewhere. And there's decisions being made at the regional, national level that are prioritizing those aircraft based on different reasons. But then, on a best case scenario, Central Oregon can, in addition to the local resources here, can staff 2 task forces. So 2 task forces is a total of 10 pieces of firefighting equipment. That's out of the structural agencies in Central Oregon. So that's Kirk, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties. Sometimes when those conditions are particularly dangerous, we might have pre-positioned task forces. And so we might be able to take advantage of those, but those are all very hypothetical.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like a ton for something of the magnitude we're talking about. So let's move to you, Jennifer. With all of this going on and so many different agencies coordinating, what is the city's role in a disaster situation like this? And how might that vary depending on like the fires in city limits or out of city limits, or if people are evacuating from here versus to here possibly?
Yeah, and as I'm sure you're all picking up on, every city's different, and so the city of Sisters is less than 2 square miles. You know, we think of Sisters Country, we're a very small slice of it. And because we're a small city, we don't have our own fire department. We contract with the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office for Sisters specific police services, but we do not run the police department. We do not run the fire department. They're a separate district. You know, we don't do a lot of things that a larger city does. So, you know, we're not under one organization. So what's really critical is the communication, the partnership that we spend all year building and talking with each other, and making sure that, you know, we have everybody's phone numbers and just have those relationships built already, because we don't have kind of a one and done structure like maybe, you know, the city of Bend, for instance. And so beyond that, the question is if the fire is inside or outside the city. So even though City of Sisters is only 2 square miles, you know, we are basically the hub for all this entire side of the county. You know, we service a community, but, you know, depending on the time of year and number of tourists, between 10 and 15,000 people. And so, you know, we're very cognizant of the impact and services we provide for the rest of the community. You know, we are only a small portion of that percentage of people. So in my mind, it's absolutely critical, you know, that we protect and maintain our resources here as much as possible. So if the fire is outside the city, for instance, we can expect that the incident command post, the fire camp, will probably be inside the City of Sisters. You know, it's been a while since we've had one at the middle school. It used to be an annual event, maybe a couple times a year. There could be a fire camp next door, but I think it's probably been 2017 or something since that. You know, a lot of us has moved here since then. But you know, we need to be that source for water, electricity, communications, an evacuation site. You know, possibly for humans and animals, potentially. Obviously stores, hotels, you know, supplies, things like that. You know, if it's outside the city, we play a really crucial role in making sure that, you know, the operations supporting the firefighters are working. Now, if the fire is moving into the city or in the city, our number one, you know, issue, our number one priority is evacuation. We need to get people out. We can't have people in the way of our first responders, and we have a higher than average senior population in Sisters, you know, so it's very kind of cognizant to us, and I would say that we're where we need to be and where we need to get a lot of people out earlier than later because of limitations on maybe transportation or other issues. So there's some work there to be done. So that would be my number one priority if it was coming anywhere close to the city, is just to get out. As a city government, the water system still needs to function, the sewer system still needs to function. These are not infrastructure that can run by themselves. And so, you know, that's on the city staff to decide, you know, who's going to stay behind, you know, who's going to send their family away, who's going to stay behind to run these systems so that, you know, we still have fire and everything as long as we can. It is crucial to me to maintain and protect our city as best we can. Because again, we support this whole side of the county, and we house all the schools, you know, we house all the government. And if we lose some of this infrastructure, as has happened in so many other cities and so many other tragedies, it is so difficult to rebuild your community once you've lost these critical institutions. And I was just looking at the statistics for Paradise, California. You know, Paradise burned in 2019. When that burned, they had 25,000 residents. And for 2023, which is the last census data, they only have 8,000 that have returned. That's only 1/3. And if you don't get your people back, you don't get your tax base back, and you don't get the kids in the schools, and you don't get your community back. And a lot of the reasons why people can't come back is that the school was gone, the hospital was damaged. They didn't have a sewer system to begin with, so they're trying to now build a sewer system, but the water system's damaged, you know. The more we can protect and save, the better we'll be able to bounce back if we do get hit by something catastrophic. So it's, just part of my job, because I'm very specific to these 2 square miles, is to protect it as much as we can. So even again, going back to property owners here, it's just that much more critical. I think we get a little complacent because we're in the city and we've got fire hydrants and the fire department's just 3 blocks away. I'm fine, but I would flip that around and say it's just that much more critical that we make sure that nothing comes from the city, because we really need to protect this infrastructure.
It sounds like there's a ton that you're doing proactively, which is, and thinking about proactively, and then, when, it's the fan, so to speak, the city's gonna need to be ready to deploy or help direct traffic around various resources. And so the more that we can do ahead of time, the better.
Yeah, and the partnerships extend obviously to, ODOT, Central Electric Co-op and COIC and, all of these other organizations, school district that are all partners in this, yeah.
Good point. Greg, I'm gonna be mindful of time here. I'm gonna skip this question that I've listed for you in the run-up show. We're gonna move to, and I'll start with you for the next section, which is part 3, what we can do now, and then we'll get to some audience Q&A. So, all right, hopefully we better understand the local preparedness landscape. We can understand a little bit about what the process might look like and how it will unfold if a fire were to actually happen. Hopefully people are shaking their boots and really hungry for okay, give me something to do in addition to what we have in the handout. But let's just reiterate, what are some of the most important actions we can take right now? Craig, for you, you're a consultant to neighborhoods and homeowners, but you also have a lot of experience in the forests themselves. So give me maybe one of each. What's one of the most important actions that can be taken within the forest ecosystem, and then what's one of the most important actions that can be taken at the neighborhood level? Let's start with that, and then I'll go to Stephen for homeowners.
Okay, so at the public land level, and that's federal, state, BLM, Forest Service, support them. That's what they really need, and you need to reach out. If you're adjacent to them and you're concerned about the fuels on their side of the fence, reach out. There are opportunities for you to help them treat that ground. And I think it's just really important that they have our support, because they're trying really hard to do all the right things to protect us. And there's some effort, sweat equity that we can put into that as well. And sometimes that's even on their side of the fence. There's some policy out there that allows you to do that.
And then on the neighborhood level.
On the neighborhood level, talk to your neighbors. It's if you're in an HOA, then get involved with the HOA. If you're not involved with an HOA, reach out to your neighbors. Start learning about Firewise. There's a ton of information out there. What we're finding with insurance companies is that some people are being denied, even though they've done the work, because maybe their neighbors on either side haven't. So it really is, if we're going to fix the insurance problem and protect our homes, we have to do it at the neighborhood level. So be proactive, start working with your neighbors, and start spreading the word.
There really is a need for collective action on this one. I know for Doug, and I think even my neighborhood, there's certain things where your CCNRs or your architectural review guidelines are not aligned with, defensible space and home hardening best practices. And so if you're involved with your HOA, figuring out how to, reading through those and figuring out opportunities to reconcile those feels really important, because if you're getting fined for being, Firewise, that seems kind of ridiculous. Shout out to, we also have, there she's Chris over there from the Tollgate Homeowners Association. Chris has done a ton to help the Tollgate community advance Firewise practices within their community. And so if you want a case study of a neighborhood that's really working hard in this space, I recommend going and chatting with her. All right, Stephen, at the home level, what's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the most important things that people can be doing? You already shouted out the 0 to 5 limit. What else can we think about?
I'll shout that out again, but during fire season, we already had a fire the other night. You guys all consider yourself on evacuation level 1. Best thing to do is get ready so you can leave early. Don't stay home to try to fight wildland fire with a garden hose. Fire department has a lot more water and a lot more hose or bigger hose than you do at your home. So what we want you to do, our goal is life safety. We have the opportunity now, because we haven't had a big event come through here in a long time, to do what's best for our neighbors, for our own home, for our town. We don't want to have to think about what it's going to be like to try to rebuild our town and how long that would take. and the services that would be around because there's no money, there's no tax base. So everybody needs to look at their own home, and hopefully by doing some work, your neighbors are gonna catch on, they're gonna understand what you're trying to do. You're gonna have those conversations. Firewise is a great thing. It's all voluntary, but we certainly have been able to get to HOAs, to change CCRs. So they work, Firewise best practices. Again, we don't want any home to catch on fire, then we don't have to we deal with a wildland fire that goes around our town and it doesn't affect us.
No one else? Hello? I'm blinking. Good.
Hello, thank you. In the video at the beginning, we saw some specific actions that people can take, removing mulch away from your house, and replacing it with rock, putting in that 1/8 inch mesh instead of 1/4 inch mesh under your vents, for instance. Any other like specific actions like that you can think are highest priority?
If you don't know, please reach out to us. There's a QR code on the desk over there that you can sign up for somebody to contact you to do an assessment on your home. We're gonna give you some low-hanging fruit things to do, they can do right away to gear up for the fire season. Now, no vegetation in 0 to 5 feet, that's difficult for a lot of people, especially if you have trees and big bushes and you're gonna have to have landscape companies come in to help you. But we really want everybody to concentrate on the 0 to 5 foot space. That's where your house is gonna catch on fire.
Jennifer, what about at the city level or at the, the broader community level? What do you think are some of the most important actions that we can take collectively or that the city can take to support its residents?
I'll tell you that the city is trying to lead by example. So the city had a fire mitigation plan done a couple of years ago that they are slowly and surely taking off the boxes on that to-do list. And the city owns a lot of property within the city and also outside of the city. So we're not going to ask people to do anything that we're not doing ourselves. And part of that we're excited to launch into is we are going to use City Hall as a demonstration garden. So you may have seen a couple trees come down in the last few weeks. And we were actually given a grant from one of our insurance providers to do that, which was fantastic. And we're going to use that property and try to do the 0 to 5 zone. We're going to have some signage so people can, walk around the property and see what that looks like and get some information on signage and learn from that as well. So we're absolutely trying to lead, and again, not ask people to do what we're not doing ourselves because, again, we want to protect our infrastructure.
Way to walk the talk. Nathan, let's end with you for this. What are some of the most important actions that you think can be taken at the regional level? And again, that can be, from the agency side of things or just, thinking about ourselves as, citizens of this region.
I'm going to take that from, I'm going to go the angle of what we can do as a greater region. I think the reality of it is public discourse oftentimes is challenging, and there's a lot of public policy issues at stake when we're talking about making and building communities resilient to wildland fire. Remember, very early on in this presentation, Craig talked about how we live in a fire-adapted ecosystem. We will not bend nature to our will. The reality of it is fire will happen. It will threaten our communities. We cannot fight our way out of this. If you look to California, California can field more resources on any given fire than probably the rest of the country combined. And every year they lose hundreds of thousands of acres and probably thousands of homes on average every year to wildland fire, and I should say urban conflagrations. The reality of it is we need to educate ourselves and be prepared for respectful, good public policy discussions. Help us serve you better. We serve the community, we serve you. And your willingness to show up tonight and the number of folks that are here tonight demonstrates that there are people that want to learn, or you already might know a lot, and how you can help sway that public policy discussion with your friends and your neighbors and help just encourage people to learn about it. And I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I know everything, because I don't, but the reality of it is I'm always learning, I'm studying, because the reality of it is I have to for my job, but really I have to because I live in Central Oregon and you're my friends and my neighbors, and I need to do what I can do to support you and your state.
Yeah, you're talking C4C's language. Thank you. I think that's a good note to end on. If you have a question, there's two ways that you can help with that. You can either write it down on one of the note cards that either you or your neighbor has, and you can lift that up and we'll grab it and those will be brought up. We also have two people with microphones, Jim over here and Scott at the back, if you'd like to raise your hand. While people are mulling over their questions, I just want to encourage you again to continue mingling with some of our awesome vendors and tabling organizations who are here after the forum ends. We have the Fire Corps. We have, and you can learn more about wildfire home assessments. I mentioned the Tollgate Homeowners Association. You can learn about how they're implementing firewise practices. We have a couple of folks from OSU Extension who have resources around how you can have more fire-resistant landscaping, as well as how you can protect your body and your indoor air quality in your home itself during the smoke season or during fires. We have some folks that are talking about how you can better manage debris or prescribed burns on your land, and some resources that are available for folks both within and outside of city limits if you are incapable of removing that debris yourself or you need some extra help. Those folks are along the back over there. Tracy Trotter in the middle offers regional emergency and first aid trainings. I think that is something that we didn't really touch on, but is an important thing to mention, is that, you know, in this case of an emergency, we all might be required to render aid. And so being able to be trained for that is really important. Who else we got back there? We got Sandy Riley from Rotary Club of Sisters, who worked with Jack McGowan, who you might remember from our last emergency preparedness panel, to prepare some go bags and go boxes to help you understand exactly what you should have on hand in order to be best prepared to evacuate. And then we've got Central Electric Co-op over here talking about some of the actions that they're taking to help keep us all safe, recognizing that, you know, as we mentioned, power lines can be a risk of causing fires. And so they're able to talk about that and talk about what you can do at your home as well. Did I miss anyone from the vendors? I don't think so. Well, thank you all for being here. That's really valuable to have that type of information, and we have them linked in your take-home packet as well. All right, where's our first question? I saw someone with the hand raised. Yes, over here.
Hi there. My name is Jeff Tryans, and I live in Crossroads. And I just want to say before I actually ask a question that there has just been an amazing mastication job around Crossroads in the last few weeks, probably. I just kind of walk my dog out there all the time, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I live in a park. And there was, I mean, there was no debris piles, there was nothing. It was all gone. So my hat's off to the Forest Service, whoever's here from that. So last summer, I was struck by the fact that while we were in intense fire season risk, and there were no fires allowed in the forest at all, that every one but one of our retailers that sells firewood was still selling it and refused to even talk to me about moving it to the back or putting up a sign that says, hey, you know, you can't have fires in the national forest. Why can't we do something about that? Why can't we get firewood for sale out of Sisters during a high risk area where there's no burning allowed in the forest?
I'm going to expand that question slightly. Thank you, Jeff. And just ask what is the role of the business community in being, part of our community and helping to take action, whether it's, removing things that could cause fire from their shelves, or maybe even, taking efforts to make their own businesses more wildfire resistant. Anyone want to chat? Jen?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a little hard. We don't have a lot of jurisdictions over businesses. I mean, the city obviously issues business licenses and has some rules around that. But I mean, that's a great point. It's something that I think is going to be another team effort. I think that's something maybe the fire district and the city of EDCO, perhaps Sisters Business Alliance, maybe a conversation around that might be helpful, because that's a great question and it's a good idea. Yeah.
Sounds like it could be a nice follow-up for whether it's C4C or SBA or other entities to talk about what we can do as local organizations and businesses as well. I've gotten a few questions via paper, and then I'll go to another hand raised one. One here: is there a group in town that is coordinating volunteer efforts to assist needy neighbors with landscape clearing? I'm so glad you asked. Please go talk to H Friend in Sisters Country at the back of the room. She's very excited that someone's asking about this, and they are ready to help with volunteers who can help assist with that, called Rake It. And COIC next door, if you live outside of city limits, they also have an excellent program that can help those that need with landscape clearing. So whether you live within city limits or outside of it, those are the people to talk to at the back. I had one more question I was going to post from here. Let's see what it is. This says evacuation routes versus new housing developments. I'm assuming that maybe there's a concern around growth compromising safe evacuations. Anyone want to touch on that and how do we balance those two things?
I get asked this question all over the county, so you're not unique here in Sisters. You know, Oregon land use law limits planning and jurisdictional's ability to limit development strictly or build roadway systems that are designed for evacuation. And, you know, how the law requires that you have to build roadways for like, I think it's average daily trips or something like that based on the use. And so sometimes, and actually less than Sisters, I think, you know, in other parts of the county, there's been a lot of concern about that, particularly like in the west side of Bend and areas like that. But the reality of it is, you know, in the Sisters area, the important thing is recognizing what your routes out of your neighborhood are, being aware of those, and really having like a good understanding of when you might use one versus the other. So my recommendation is the way you come and go from your house every day is probably the best designed, best route for you to evacuate. But you know, if you have a secondary, you know, maybe let's say you live on the north end of town, and say you live, you know, up in the subdivision just right, you know, kind of north of City Hall up there, you know, you might seek the roundabout out and take Highway 20 or 126, or you could go out Camp Polk, depending on traffic conditions. We do set up a lot of, or we do have a lot of strategies and tactics around managing those key intersections. So, you know, how we can keep traffic moving in certain areas, even if we are seeing a real high demand. You know, probably the biggest struggle with Sisters in general is the over the mountain traffic on your busy summer weekends. And so there are some strategies around managing that as well. But, you know, as far as development, I think if development is done in a way where those homes are less likely to be impacted by fire by their design, hardening, and defensible space, that's probably the most important thing to focus on. But that's just my 2 cents.
Jennifer, were you going to say something as well?
Just, yeah, a little bit, and I'm gonna look at the city manager when I ask this question, or I point this out, but I usually, especially when something's master plan, like a larger plot, a larger neighborhood, you know, the fire department is involved in that process at some point, because, you know, they need to be able to make sure they get apparatus and, you know, large vehicles can get in and out. You know, so they are in on the conversation, and then that certainly is something that is considered.
Great, thanks, y'all. Got a question in the back. Yes, please.
Hi, okay, it's on. Yeah, my name's Adam. I'm a local citizen here. I'm very heartened to hear that we're talking about home hardening and community defense, and that really is, I think, the most important thing. We have a home ignition problem, not a wildlands fire problem. Last year, USDA spent $500 million on active forest management. If that money was put into communities, home hardening, community planning, these sorts of things, we just imagine the sort of impact we could have on protecting our homes. Are all of you familiar with Dr. Jack Kellen? He was a fire science guy, worked for the Forest Service. Well, he was pushed out of the Forest Service because his science showed that once you go beyond 100 feet from a structure, there's virtually no benefit to that structure not burning down. So we're putting all this energy and money into the backcountry, destroying our ecosystems, by the way. We open up the canopy, wind penetration, we're drying out everything. And those embers, like Craig said, they blow into the communities and they start fires. So is anybody talking about this sort of stuff? Thank you.
Craig, I'll let you start with this one, and you know, the trade-offs between, sounds like prescribed burning or work out on the forest versus potentially inland, and is it a either-or type of situation?
Yeah, some great points there. I'm going to disagree with you that we're wasting money treating our lands out there and where the treatments are happening, but you make a really good point. I don't think it is an either or. I think it's a both. It's not just a public lands problem. It's an urban problem now as well. And we have to start addressing both of those. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, our forests are overgrown. We've been taking fire out of them. We've essentially removed fire out of that ecosystem for 100 years. We've grazed it. We've done all kinds of different management practices, and it's not a natural functioning ecosystem anymore. So we have to do both.
There's some great books in the take-home packet as well that I'd recommend that kind of talk about that history of landscape management and humans trying to harness nature in various ways and what some of the potentially unintended consequences of that. I recommend taking a look at those in the take-home packet. The Big Burn by Timothy Egan is a good one. Sisters Festival of Books, and in partnership with Paulina Springs Books, is going to be partnering on a book club event in May. Details will be shared soon for the book Fire in Paradise, which is a case study of the fire in Paradise, California as well. And so there's some opportunities to go deeper in that respect as well that I recommend. Anyone else want to talk about this topic, or should we move on to another question?
We open up a can of worms here. So the fuels treatment that's been done around us, U.S. Forest Service, ODF, have been treating around and creating a moat around Sisters Country. They're gonna kind of finish off with the Cougar Rock project, which they're just starting, which kind of goes Black Butte and heads down north of us to try to get some protection from anything coming from the north. So when I talk to people at their homes, I think what I see out on the forest and how the treatments have been done. I did hear 100 years ago you could ride a buggy from Settle Lake all the way to Burns and not run over a juniper because of the fires that took all the underbrush. And so what are we left with here? We are living in the forest, basically. We've moved here, and then we set up our homestead and we made pretty yards, and we haven't, we're starting to figure out that what we're planting around our house can be a danger to our house, can be a danger to our neighbor's house and our community. So when I look at neighborhoods as a whole, we're looking at firewise, and we're doing an assessment on the neighborhood. I see most of the danger to it's ourselves. It's in it starts in our neighborhoods. So 85% of people that are starting fires, that could be your neighbor with a runaway burn pile. So we need to look at ourselves a little harder, and we should appreciate what's been done on the forest around us, and make sure that we're not the ones that are going to burn the forest down because of what we're doing.
Nothing provocative there at all. I'm going to go to this written one, and then I'm going to go to Sandy at the back, and be mindful of time. We might have time for two more. This question is, what is being done about unregulated camping in the forest outside of town? Is that something that is concerning from a fire standpoint? And if so, what are the opportunities to help mitigate that?
I think we should all be concerned about that. Last Friday, we met with pretty much all the key players that run the forest and keep tabs on houseless people. That included Sisters Fire, ODF, U.S. Forest Service, and BLM, and we want to get our heads wrapped around, our job in the fire department is prevention. As of late, I've become an insurance expert as well, but
we'll invite you back next month.
Thanks. So we're trying to get our heads wrapped around it, and a lot of people have heard my spiel. I say, you know what, the fuels are, we've done a great job of fuels treatments around there. These people that are houseless are out there, and our job as prevention is to make sure that we're giving them the education and the tools to prevent a fire. Again, 85% of the fires are caused by humans. So we are doing a joint effort this summer. Again, last year, some of you may have heard that the fire district, our board of directors wanted us to do something for prevention for the people that are living out in the forest. And so we visited about 85 camps, gave them some necessary things to prevent fires, or something that they could stop a fire if it happened in their camper. We gave fire extinguishers out to people who needed them. We gave batteries for smoke detectors, CO detectors, little first aid kits. And we didn't really want to tell the public about that because sometimes you're looked as an enabler. Again, we're life safety, and so by doing this, it actually came back to us in a positive light. We had a fire that started in a campsite, and one of the people we gave 2 extinguishers to, because they had 2 campers, helped extinguish the fire with the exact extinguishers we had him 2 months prior. So again, the work that we're doing and the work that we're going to continue to do is to make sure that we're mitigating those risks to our forests, to the people who live out there, and to our town as well. So the concerted effort is going to be this year is we're going to be going around camps and looking for things, giving them some tips. We don't have any authority to remove those people. So right now, we're just going to try to stick to our prevention aspect of it and make sure that they are not causing fires. Again, we have fires on people's homeowners' properties, so we're educating those people as well. And you all are hearing that we've got to do better. And so those are some of the things we're looking at this year. We do see that there's some more people moving in because of other things that are going on. And so we're really all together, we're really putting in a joint effort to make sure that everybody's safe.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Sandy in the back. And if we go quick, I think we'll have time for one more over here that might have been raised. Sandy.
All right, thanks, Kellen. This is a home hardening specific question. I live over in Saddlestone, and almost all of us have wooden fences that are literally 4 feet from each housing site. I might be able to convince my HOA and my neighbors to chip in and change our wooden fences to metal decorative fencing if the HOA allows us, but we also all have propane tanks, large ones. The new code that the state put out that they're gonna probably pull back in said that propane tanks shouldn't be any closer than 30 feet to a house. That's impossible. How safe is a home propane tank?
Okay, so propane tank, it's metal. So if you think in terms of a wildland fire, a propane tank having embers blowing on it are probably just going to go out as long as there's nothing underneath it or there's wood structures hiding it. That's how I got involved in homeowner association and management companies is by owners not wanting to screen their propane tanks, zero lot lines, and HOA saying you have to put arborvitaes around this. That's exactly what you don't want to put is 5 gas cans around your propane tank. So propane tanks will vent if they're hot enough, and they have to be in the 265-degree range. And they have a little valve on the top that'll vent. And if you got embers flying through the air and that thing's venting, it's going to be a blowtorch on your house. Honestly, your house catching on fire is what's going to make your propane tank catch on fire. So let's avoid that. Let's make sure that, when we have those propane tanks, that all the houses in the zero lot lines are right next to your home. If you're going to screen it in with something, have it be metal, have it be gigantic boulders, nothing that's combustible. So in a wildland fire, your propane tank is not going to catch your house on fire. Again, if your neighbor's house catches on fire, it might be enough heat to make your propane tank levy. That's what they call it. But as far as a wildland fire, we would like to see propane tanks in ground. We would like to see them at least 10 feet away. If anybody wants to know what IBHS is coming out with for their best practices, and by the way, Jack Kellen, they took his studies to start Firewise. That's what the best practices were coming from. All the studies he did were passed on. So we're using a lot of Jack Kellen's information and science for Firewise, for IBHS, and the studies that they do on defensible space. So these are proven things. And so again, if you have propane questions, my crack staff over there also has the latest and greatest information, hopefully on their phones, in an email I sent last week.
All right. Final question over here. I can repeat it too.
Fighting fires on well, power of cities that set fire. And is that significant?
Is it disadvantageous to have a well if the firefighters are trying to fight a fire at your house as opposed to having a fire hydrant out front? This also reminds me of Jack McGowan's awesome story from our last emergency preparedness forum. So Jack, raise your hand for a second. If you want to talk about wells and just preparedness out of the wazoo. Go talk to Jenna. But yeah, wells.
Wells, your well probably won't produce enough water to fill up our truck in any timely fashion. We will grab, if somebody has a water source for irrigation, we can certainly grab water out of those with hard suction. We're gonna bring our own hydrants to the fires, and that's in the form of, we call them water tenders, and we have 1,800 gallon water tender and two 2,500 gallon water tenders. Cloverdale has three, between 2,500 and 3,000. And so, we're gonna bring water to the fire, but we will grab water where we can, and we don't test hydrants, that are on private water systems like Sage Meadows. We don't even test the cities, but we exercise those and we know what kind of pressures they have. Those are the hydrants that we're gonna grab water from because it can grab it faster. And, you know, wildland fire, we fight fire with a lot less water. One thing Nathan mentioned is that we have air tanker support, and we're quick to call on those guys. They're eyes in the sky for us. They can tell us like a lot of stuff that we can't see on the ground. And so air support's been paramount in some of the fires that we've been to. And he didn't allude to the fact that the fire in Rabbit Brush, there was an air tanker in the air heading to Spokane that got rerouted, and within 9 minutes it dropped a line and stopped that fire. Otherwise, everything it was blown from the northwest, right? It would have taken out Sun Meadow Ranches and all those homes out there. They were all evacuated, but we lost a couple structures on that, and the fire was put right out. It was retarded.
Well, let's give it up for our panelists real quick. We know that we're only scratching the surface of one of these issues, but our hope is that this is a catalyst for additional conversation and action in the community. We have a few things that we want to point you to. One is the handout I already mentioned. There's a lot of resources that you can do to take action around your home and around your neighborhood. Part 2 of this conversation focused on fire insurance will be right here on May 18th, same time, 4 to 5:30 in the afternoon. This Wednesday, the fire station, in partnership with Central Oregon Fire Prevention Co-op, is hosting another preparedness fair with some conversations at the fire hall from 5 to 8 p.m. Highly encourage you to go to that one and get even deeper on the preparedness side of things. I mentioned the book club. Check out our website for opportunities to get involved in that very soon. And talk to your neighbors, talk to your community members. I think that's probably a good thing to end on because it's so C4C centric. We're focused on community building, relationship building, finding common ground with one another. Doing all of those things is one of the most important things that we collectively as a community can do to be more prepared for wildfire. And as you probably heard, collective action is a huge part of this challenge. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you to Rotary, thank you to Kiwanis, thank you to the C4C board, thank you to our speakers, thank you to the vendors, thank you to the elementary school, thank you to Startime, to the child care. Also, if you have people who need childcare to come to these things, we please tell them that we're providing it. And right now, we only have about 4 kids in there, and we would love to see some younger faces. All right. With that, thank you so much. Be well. Have a great rest of your weekend.